All right, there we are.
All right. Good morning. Welcome back to HammerCast Episode 2. Today we're joined by David Anderson, and we're here to recap his experiences at the Dumpster Fire GT that was at Palladium Games just a couple weeks ago.
Good morning.
So,
thanks for having me.
The first question that we should probably ask is, David Anderson, who are you for those listeners at home?
Who am I? David Anderson. I play by Orion, if you see him in any of the lists. Competitive Warhammer player. Play Black Templars exclusively, mostly. I've got Knights as well. I was working on a Guard Army too. But for the most part, if you see me, I'm usually playing some sort of version of Black Templars, and we'll get into that a little bit. I've been a competitive gamer for between tabletop games and video games for probably better part of 25 plus years. And I picked up Warhammer about 3 years ago. So Atlantic City, that's where I learned how to play Warhammer. My buddy Justin was playing in his basement, and I was like, hey, yeah, I'd like to learn how to play Warhammer. And he's like, all right, cool. Well, we got a tournament in 6 weeks, so we're preparing for it. Like, I'm going to go with you. So I learned how to play through Atlantic City. That's my anniversary event. And then kind of the rest is history. I played with Death or Glory for a little while. Was picked up by Tom Ogden, was a good friend of mine. And eventually, I was invited by Dumpster Fire here in Philly. So a handful of friends I've been playing with anyways, and they sent me an invite, said, hey, you should come play with the Orange. And I picked up that mantle this year, and the rest is history. So,
wow, 3 years.
Yeah, just about.
That's a lot of achievements.
ACO 2022 it was?
Yeah, it was 2022. Yep, end of 9th edition. Yeah, because I remember I brought a whirlwind because I thought it looked cool, and I forgot to shoot with it half the time. My buddy Justin actually babysat me for 3 of the matches at the beginning. Says a lot about this community too, because everybody was so welcoming. Oh, you're new. This is great. So they were teaching me how to play. Then one of my games was Frank, who's an absolute legend in our region. He runs his own tournament at Christmas tournament. So that was one of my first opponents. He was giving me great advice on how to play. I walked away with 2 wins, so I was proud of that.
Hell yeah.
The next year was in the 9th edition, the World of Desolation Marines, and I went X and 1 through Desolation Marines alone. So I've been ramping up. I'm rather active. I travel quite a bit for these tournaments. I tell people who are outside of Warhammer, hey, tell me a little bit about this game and why I play it. And I tell people all the time, it's the community. Yeah. Honestly, it's the people. I don't know much about the fluff. I don't know much, I still call things like that, I'm like Derek. I'll be like, whatever that is over there, I want to shoot it.
Yeah.
Still trying to get those terms under lock, but really it's the players, the people I've met. You guys included, Charles, we've played. It keeps me coming back.
Yeah. The community here is definitely big. After playing 12 years professional TCG, I won't say the game name. I ain't gonna slander nothing, but the community terms and difference is way different in this community. It's more welcoming. It didn't feel like there's more gatekeeping. Like, also the area I started in myself is pretty spoiled with a lot of great names over here, and everyone was super welcoming. And at the end of the day, you could see their goal is just they want to help you get better to make the terms of the game better for everyone else. There's no more like, oh, let's pub stomp this noob and get him out of the store.
And
hey,
Cody, you hit on like something that's really cool about this region. I hit the regional lottery in terms of Warhammer.
yeah,
Like the level of talent in this area is incredible, and they've all reached out and said, "Hey, how can I make you better?" Like Tom
yeah,
Ogden, day one. Yeah, I don't know he's in Midwest, but then going back to the region, TG Lanigan, he reached out. He's trying to make me better. Derek, Sasha,
yeah.
Sasha's a real good friend of mine now. They've all proactively reached out, and said, "Hey, let's make you a better player."
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the first guys I played outside of just some buddies where we're just like, who can kill the most miles? The first one to actually teach me competitive play was Ed Miller. Go over to his house and we'd play a ton in his garage. And then like, he's like, oh yeah, by the way, you should come to this event I host. And I was like, you host an event? He's like, yeah, just come check it out. He didn't explain the grand scale of it. And that was the first team tournament. That's actually how I met Charles. And I go there, I was like, what the hell is this? Everyone was so cool. First person to trap me into conversation, Mark Perry. He explained who he was and then talked to me for like 40 minutes to help me improve my game and give me lessons on how to get better. I was like, man, this is the community for a hobby I want to be in. Everyone was super chill, super cool. And then just the skill level in this area is out of this world.
Oh yeah, yeah. Dumpster Fire GT. This is a feather in my hat, not only because it's my first GT win, but honestly, it's a lion's den. Like
Yeah.
if anybody who's ever not familiar with the area, not familiar with grand tournaments in general, and you want to get better, seek out this particular grand tournament because if you look at the list, there's a good 30%, Charles. I think you would agree, a good 30% who could have won this event.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because all the top six, any one of them.
Yeah. And it's a testament too to like the locals in the area because when I went to my first dumpster fire GT, I played some of your local guys who like I played I forgot his name but he had a cool Eldar army. It was all dinosaurs. Like everything was like dinosaur themed and stuff. He's like, yeah, I just
Yeah, I know
played
who you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah.
I
If we
don't
remember his name,
either,
we could
though.
shout them out. His dad was great too. He had an awesome Felix. Yeah, great kid. He was like, yeah,
Oh yeah, the Wheelins. That's right. I
yeah,
played his dad at Dumpster Fire.
yeah.
This
They're
last
like,
GT.
we just play the RTTs and play locally to have fun, and then I go into the game. I don't have any expectations. I was like, man, clean rules, super good strategy. I was like, that's just the locals here are out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're so super cool.
Yeah.
But speaking of people in the community, I think this leads us well into our next segment called "Can You Spot the True Believer?" And this is for David, of course. So we have 4 people who are either locals or, in Innes's case, just sometimes come across the pond to game with us. And only one of these players is actually a Black Templars player.
Only one.
Only one.
And this reminds me of Sasha because Sasha's heart is also with Rogodorn.
Oh, that's why. Like we couldn't have put Sasha in here. It would have been too easy for David. He would have known right off
Iron
the
Fist
rip.
outfit.
But we'll see if David can spot a kindred spirit here.
Oh man.
So we have Innes, who allegedly hearts Rogodorn. We have Anthony Vanella. When he's not crusading, he's taking long walks on the beach. We have Frank, who enjoys many armies, but Templars most of all. And we have Cody, who knows no pity, remorse, or fear, and that's just his day job.
Damn right.
So, David, if you were to, channel your inner Black Templar, could you spot the true believer?
Yeah, my gut goes towards Cody because Black Templar players, we tend to be like tenaciously like zero in on this is all we do. So my guess is going to be Cody. No.
Wrong.
It was a nice try.
It's a good guess.
I could understand Cody playing Black Templars. He would probably enjoy it.
Yeah, that's where the heart was originally, but my good buddy Dom plays them, so I ended up getting Disgusting Tau. And then shooting armies was history. Nope.
Yeah, and that's the only army Cody's played for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Cody, how many days sober are you? When was the last model you bought?
Last non-model I bought that was for myself and was not Imperial Guard, I think was in October. It's been a while. I haven't bought armies in a minute. So we're doing good. Sold everything else. The only other things I buy that's not Guard is just a commission up, and that's it.
Yeah.
So we're doing good. Sticking with the one. I mean, also having the threat of any point Anthony could come through my window and roundhouse me if I buy a different army after all the effort he's put into my Guard.
And he would, 100%.
Yeah, that's a high threat. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you were the one who wanted to install the zip line to make even easier access. So that sounds like a you thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, our true Black Templar believer from that list is Frank.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he is a mini army enjoyer, but he's a crusader at heart for sure.
Yep.
You can just see it in his eyes, honestly. So, I
And
believe
Triv,
David
no, I
has a
don't.
quick plug. This was actually the name of his list at the Dumpster Fire GT, but would be a good plug section while we're here, certainly. So, David, take it away.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, we've got a couple things going on. If you've not, I think Charles, you were at my grand tournament, correct? So you can speak to this. If you don't know, I run a grand tournament out of Green Dice Gaming in Slatington, Pennsylvania. It is in a farmer's market, which is kind of a surprise to most people not familiar with a tournament in a farmer's market. But it's a huge facility. There's an expo center that can fit hundreds of people in there, and the feedback was phenomenal. We had 55 people. Like 2 people dropped day 1, and we only had like 1 or 2 drop day 2 because of the environment that you play in. Plenty of room. Like you could do jumping jacks between tables. The food is phenomenal, and you could eat a meal for like $10. There's
Yeah.
beer. We gave out free beers as well.
Yeah, can't beat that.
The feedback was so well put that I was like, all right, the next one we're gonna do is a major. So in June, first weekend of June, so June 6th. So all you dads out there that you kind of like hem and haw because about Atlantic City because it's on Father's Day that Sunday. Here's an event for you. And if you want to go to both, you've got opportunity to do a major the weekend before, but it will be 3 days, 8 games. Even if you can only do 2 games, it's still 6 games. It's a GT's worth of games if you as you drop on end of Saturday. Um, it's on BCP. If you just search for Slatington, Pennsylvania, and if you sign up before the event, you get $20 off. So I think it comes down to like $90, which is a tremendous value
Oh
for
yeah.
a tournament. And then you guys will be the first to hear about this. We just started the work on Winter Ruin 3.
Ooh.
And this is going to be huge. This is going to be huge. And one of the things I challenged the owner on, this is the first teaser of this, is I've been to a lot of grand tournaments, and I've never seen one that actually hands over a Warhammer for a trophy, an actual Warhammer. And we know blacksmiths in the area. So we're like, wonder if what we could do to get this. So we've got some designs in place for the trophy to not only be an actual Warhammer, but we're hoping that we'll have a gold ticket for the event as well.
Man, that sounds awesome. I know some electrical engineers. We could add some lightning to that hammer.
There you go.
Yeah, that is big
Should be
news.
exciting.
Golden ticket, real Warhammer. And I gotta say, we went to the Winter Ruin for the last one, and that was one of the best event locations we have ever been to. Myself and most of the guys on the Hammer Park team agreed. We've done a lot of traveling all over the country, some players out of the world. That location was primo. Yeah, farmers market was absolutely huge. Tons of vendors, great location, great hotels nearby. It was a spectacular weekend. There was dogs walking around. I mean, how can you beat it?
Yeah,
Well,
a lot of spectators from the community. It's a local small community too. Slatington, Pennsylvania is really small, so they loved having us. So you're generating a lot of water for the community, and we're also gonna have 2 streamers. We're hoping that we've got 2 streamers. They've already given us like the verbal, yeah, we're gonna be there. So it should
awesome.
be huge.
Yeah, that was great. Oh, that's great.
Oh, and Cody, I don't know if you saw, but there's a gentleman in the chat who's trying to test your resolve here.
I saw. Nope.
Yeah,
I think I see Anthony getting ready in case I do.
exactly.
Oh,
He's warming up, man.
yeah. See him putting the sneakers on.
All right,
Yeah, that
that's
sounds
awesome.
great. Like Dave said, guys, the event is on BCP. We're going to link it in here as well. Get the early bird special. And then, is there for people that may sign up now but have to cancel? Do you guys have a deadline?
Yeah, 30 days prior.
3 days prior.
And I'll explain the why behind that. Mike, who runs Green Dice, he's returned a lot of the investment from the tournament cost into building up. He's not here to try to make a ton of money off the events. He wanted to make sure that he's got an opportunity to essentially fill a void that is, hey, where's our majors? Because we've got like what, Nova.
Yeah.
That's about it. And now Atlantic City's back to having singles, but we wanted to have some sort of void fill. And so he's reinvesting that money. And so what he's been doing is buying huge amounts of terrain and resources
Awesome.
to provide for these. So that's why we have a 30-day cutoff, because he's using the money to buy.
100%. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great point too, with Nova being like really one of the nearer big ones. And there's a community here and it is hungry for competitive events. That's what at Rogue State, where our main local is, we post up the RTT and it sells out within 24 hours. So it's at the point now where Anthony he's running 2 RTTs a month, and as soon as the link hits up, they are sold just like that.
Yeah, the RTTs here will have over 30 people. So if you've never seen this and you want to get a kind of a preview, check out some of the RTTs that Rogue Green Dice does.
Mhm.
And also because of the new ITC changes, usually the RTTs at Green Dice are worth as much as a 5-day grand tournament because so
Right.
many people show up to these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Definitely.
have the same up at Rogue State, and it's really awesome. As we've said multiple times, just highlighting the absolute legends in the community, building it up. It's been great.
Yeah. That
Okay,
sounds good.
well, so we've seen the title of your list, David. It was a very long list title, but well worth the detour. So we have the actual list here.
Yeah.
So why don't you run us through this and see what some of your choices were.
So some of the people who know me really, really well probably rolled their eyes and laughed when I made this. I was not sober. Let's just say that. I was also almost late, and I'm looking at my buddy Sasha. We're at a party, and I'm like, "Oh, I've got to get a list in." And here is beautiful Sasha right next to me, and it's very inspired by how him and I play. Just kind of in seriousness is MSU. We both believe that MSU is kind of the way to play this game right now. If you really want to have consistency in your results,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily top, but if you want consistency in results, that was the main theme of this. Black Templars. I tell you what, it's my passion army. That let's just rip this band-aid off right away. I just wanted to get the cheese out of the oath right away because
Yeah.
this was the last opportunity to use that, and it kind of speaks to the power of having +1 to wound on an oath target.
Right.
But also what it spoke to was, listen, Black Templars, Art of War just did a video and they talked about this and they hit it right on the head. Um, we have taken so much collateral damage from nerfs. Like I think we're up to like 5 or 6 or 7 hits at this point. They
Mhm.
just keep banging us and banging us and banging us and banging us. And we keep paying these taxes because they keep trying to draw down some of the power from Space Marine units. And then our heroes are, Helbrick and Grimalis went astronomical in points. And the Righteous Crusader, it's a great idea on paper, but we're a
Mhm.
melee army. But one of the things that people ask is, can you advance and charge? Nope.
Yeah.
Can you fall back and charge? Nope.
Yeah.
So we're like missing things that intuitively you think that would be in Righteous Crusader, but Gladius Task Force honestly provides for that in such an incredible way. Um,
Mhm.
this is very data driven, so just kind of get back to the core of this. This is a data driven list. I track all my events through piece of paper and a notebook, and I went through and I looked at my win ratio of Gladius Task Force versus Righteous Crusader. My win ratio on Gladius Task Force was like 78%. Righteous Crusader was just hovering around 60%. So all right, and Sasha and I talked about how Gladius Task Force has incredible flexibility, like being able to advance and shoot, advance and charge, fall back, shoot and charge. That tactical is probably my favorite one
Right.
because even in tactical, even in early game, being able to put something in tactical just so that you have that 6-inch reactive can also be a very powerful synergy. There's just so many flexible tools with it. And then when you have Stern Guard in there that already have assault in their guns, so being able to advance, shoot, and charge with these guys, like there's a lot of flexibility. And the core of how I build my list now to create the consistency came from like this. There's this great Reddit story about these D&D players testing a new game system or something or rather, and like some guy like overheard them. And I'm just really summarizing this story here. This guy overheard what they were doing and was invited to play. And it turns out he's an older gentleman, like in his 50s or 60s. Turns out he's former military, and he goes, "So what's the objective? What are my resources? All right, and then this is exactly what we're going to do." And
Yeah.
so when I approach any list, all the way from the end of 9th edition, I go, what are the objectives? How do I score them? What are the units that are going to do this for me? And so I'm like, in the current meta, I want to be able to score on every secondary card. I don't want to pull a card like, oh, I can't score this.
Right.
Mark for death. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
That's just bonkers. But I wanted to be able to say I can consistently score every card in the deck.
Right.
And the other flip side of this is because I have so many units, I want every one of my units to be able to punch up. So,
Hmm.
for example, if I've got Outriders right now are a great example. 80 points, they punch up. They can clear a unit that's anywhere between 100 to 120 points.
Definitely.
And I go through unit counts in my head. I'll ask, how many units do you have, and I will whittle down your scoring units first. So I'm showing you how I play, and then I'll start punching up accordingly to keep the rhythm of the game going for myself.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. And it's cool to see too, like real world experience from like military strategy can actually translate to a military strategy game, you know? And it definitely hits one of those points. A bunch of buddies I have that are actively serving right now, when they're deployed or on ships and stuff, they tell me they only have two board games they could play. One is Stratego, and the other is Kill Team. They have someone build the models for them, and they play Kill Team all the time because it hits that strategy of tight corner combat, how you can use your resources, how you can get objectives done. And it really fires all the neurons, and it can translate to almost real world experiences to what they have to deal with to get these missions done. So I thought that was pretty cool to see.
Yep.
No, that's super cool.
I will say that my first opponent, well, I know we'll get into the games here in a moment. I created this list and I forgot about it. And then as I'm packing stuff up, I'm like looking at the list. I'm like, why did I have eradicators in this list?
Yeah,
Who created this list? This is a mess, and I'm gonna get clocked out every single time.
yeah.
But it worked out, and it worked in my favor.
I am shocked every time I see the eradicators because I don't sweep on them. But then when the damage they can output, because it's like I'm rerolling the hits, I'm rerolling the wounds, I'm rerolling the damage. When they're shooting into vehicles and playing guard, mostly all my big MVP units or vehicles, I'm like, man, these guys are incredible. I'd play them in every Marine list
Yeah, but
just
then
as an insurance. But
when everything has a forp
yeah,
involved, you get two through and they bounce. Like,
yeah,
it's a waste of points.
yeah,
Yeah, I was really frustrated that I had those in those lists. I knew they were bad, and they're just not as good as they used to be. I think they're
yeah.
paying for the sins of 9th edition or early 10th when we were running 6 of them with fire discipline. You had
Uh,
lethal, so it's just like, all right, take all these saves on
right,
AP4.
right.
So, David, that kind of leads me maybe into a question that I had about your list. You've
Sure.
got a lot of units there. Did you feel that there were any that consistently overperformed for you, that were like all stars? And did you feel that there were any that are kind of on the chopping block now post event?
Yeah, working backwards, the eradicators I immediately like the day after day one. I'm like I was remaking my list, like those are gone,
Yeah.
waste of 100 points. And the jump pack captain I could flex into a grav captain. So we don't see the enhancements on there, but the jump pack captain has artifice armor, so that can be a 2 up, 4 up, 5 up.
Hmm.
He's a running around as a brick scoring for me, and that worked really well. And then I can
Right,
pillow tank him if I wanted with extra assault intercessor, jump back intercessors with it.
right. I
But
can say now.
I think those are missing on there. Jump pack intercessors.
Uh,
Yeah, I had 2 sets of jump pack intercessors as well.
There were even more units, and I
Yeah, there
just
was
glossed over
17
them when I
total units. I could
summarized
flex
this.
into 18. Yeah.
Good Lord.
Um, yeah, and I did use a pillow fort with him once. So that was a really good combination there. I will say the MVPs were the Stern Guards, and I did play them in a unique style. What I did was I split them up between two. I had one captain with Honor Vehement, if you don't know, and I used him. I used his profile. They gave him a volume of attacks, so 6 plus 2 plus 3 on finest hours. I think he's 11 attacks that hits on 2s with
mm,
some Stern Guard. And then I ran a lieutenant with fire discipline with Stern Guard, and I would still move them together to overkill if needed. Because yes, Stern Guard against an O target, especially when you're +1 to wound, they will kill what they want.
oh, that's for sure.
But one of the really cool things that they did in one of the I don't know what data slate they did it, but I believe they adjusted the close combat on them, so they have 4, or maybe they just started with 4 anyways, but they have 4 close combat weapons apiece, and that I know that's 401, but they also have the power fist, and so when you can go AP1 +1 to wound with a stratagem, all of a sudden these Stern Guard are disgusting in melee as well. And
Right,
that surprised a lot of people. Is when I would creep up on the board, they were trying to avoid being shot by them, but then when they were in advanced and charge range, all of a sudden it's like, finest hour. I just deleted your unit with
right.
one unit, and I was able to flex to have 2 together. And the reason why I did that is I wanted to avoid that feels bad of my entire brick getting picked up. like the core of my army being picked up in one activation. So you had to select which one you wanted to, the worst of the two evils to shoot off the board. And then finally, the lieutenant being able to flex and being able to fall back and charge with the lieutenant. That actually came up a couple times. That was a really awesome flex.
Yeah.
So Stern Guards split by 2. Those were my MVPs.
Yeah. Yeah, Stern Guard were awesome. I first witnessed them when I played into Sasha at the Winter Ruin GT. I'm like, they're just bolt rifles. No. And
Yeah.
then, like you said too, to their melee, when you charged into one of my 15-man bricks of Scions, I'm like, I'll just fall back next turn and shoot them. I didn't need to fall back because they all died.
Yeah.
Melee. Yep.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't want to spoil one of our games, but we'll talk about it here. The power of Stern Guard with a interrupt. I did a key interrupt, and I tell you what, it was
Yeah.
disgusting.
We're excited to get into that one for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a great segue to start jumping into some of the matchups. Spoiler alert, David did win the event, so I don't think waiting to put up the result is necessary here. But we have the scorecards. For those of you guys on mobile, it might be a little bit small, but you can definitely check it out later. And you can see what mission was played. Round 1 was, I don't remember the letters at all, but it's Purge the Foe, Smoke and Mirrors on Tipping Point here. And David was playing against Nick Langol, I believe is how you say his last name. His Creations of Bile, and apparently Nolan made him add tanks. So there was that. So David, run us through how'd that one go?
Yeah, not only add tanks, I think they were the ones with the autocannons, I believe, which is
they were the Chaos Knight not armigers, but the Chaos Knight gun guys, I believe.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good ad because power armor does not like flat 3 damage. So Nick Lang, great opponent, very super friendly. I'm sorry, Nick, because he gave me a hard time the entire weekend because after we were done, I sat down pretty much the entire game and I was kind of swimming through this victory here, and I'm like, and at the end I'm like, this is just a meme list. I wasn't sober when I made this. I don't know even. I hate Eradicators. I don't know why I did this. I'm not winning anything this weekend. I'm just here for fun. And I told him this, and in every round I was winning, he's like, I thought you said you were here just for fun. And then when I won the event, he's like, wait a minute, you're not supposed to win this event. And I'm like, but Nick played me really well. He kept me honest with those tanks, and I think that's something that I do like to add to his list. I think where it kind of fell apart for him is he gave me the tempo right away. And this is a good lesson for new players because I did the same thing really early on. Even against Charles, I was still kind of in my, hey, I'm not quite, beyond the X and 1 zone yet. And it's when players kind of get in their head that, okay, either I went first and I drew kind of crappy secondaries, or I'm going second and they're in a good position. Or they're in a position where I can't do anything. I can't get any activations. They kind of get into this mode, and I used to get in this mode where let me just push up models to create the activations so I can get this game flowing, and then hope that the dice kind of say the story of my rhythm. And there's that weird disconnect that I don't know, I don't know where it comes from. You just kind of want to intuitively get this game going and hope that you win.
Right.
And I think that's because players aren't comfortable with not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to hide. I'm going to treat this turn as an extra deployment and ask good questions like, if I move up here, can you shoot me on your turn, or can you charge me on this turn? And I'm going to just say for this game, if you're a new player especially, give yourself permission to not do something and just use your turn as an extra deployment if you don't have activations, if you can't score these cards.
Right.
And that's going to be okay. That's going to serve you better in the end game because remember, it's 5 rounds. And it's 3 hours, so it's going to serve you well to redeploy essentially. And that's Nick gave me this momentum, and that's what ended up happening. If you look in the lower right corner, he wanted that objective. He kind of flooded the board right there. And he did so in a way that he didn't use his entire army. So it became, from my head, about 800 points versus my 1,500. So I decided to kind of do kind of a counterclockwise swirl into his army and really just kind of overran him. And I think it was over by going into 4. We knew he could get 4 points on secondaries and 4 points on primary, and that was going to be about it. And I think by round 4, I pretty much tabled him. But really friendly guy. I really liked play. It was a really very enjoyable game, especially when we're sitting down and talking. It shows a good sign of a good friendly game.
Yeah, 100%. That's true too. What you said about just using a turn for extra deployment, because I know I had a bad habit of it too in the beginning until Anthony was helping me a lot on course correct is I just felt every turn I had to do something to make a play or take advantage or gain ground somewhere, and then I end up thinning myself out and getting tabled when I should have just held back or waited a turn or wait for them to come out. You know, a lot of people feel they just have to every turn go balls to the walls and just push up and go, but sometimes in the end game that's not the key factor what you should do.
Yeah, and I will say that I've seen Anthony do that more times than most, where turn 1 he'll deploy, turn 2 he'll move his deployment zone into that little V-shaped ruin, or sorry, turn 1 he'll do that.
Yeah.
And then turn 2, you know, your deployment zone is his deployment zone, and you know, often his games are over by turn 4 as well because he's tabled you. But yeah, like the power of just saying, hey, I'm staging right here, and maybe I'm not doing the most with my turn 1. But I'm asking some really important questions about how you're going to touch objectives without death. And, you know, it's a hard choice to make, definitely.
Yeah.
You can either cede ground and lose primary, or try and take the ground, die, and then also lose.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to do if you stage properly. And there's some definite power in that.
Yeah, and I want to one last plug here about his next list here. Creations of Bile for CSM is a really great combination. I think it fits really well in the current meta. So if you're a Chaos player and you're looking for a great sense of consistency in your results, and you want to see a similar win path like my own, really consider Creations of Bile MSU, because I think it's a powerful combo.
Oh, definitely.
You know, I have been considering that. So Anthony, you heard, that's permission. Okay, I'm allowed to do that. All right, so we'll hop on into round 2, the good old-fashioned terraform mission.
Yeah, this is the one I thought I was going to lose.
Jake Kuston's Demonic Incursion. So at this event, it was not yet live to utilize Shadow Legion. It was not yet live to utilize Orcs, thank God. And it was not yet live to utilize, or no, it was still live to utilize Legion of Excess, which we'll get into later. So this was like the last of the slightly old meta before a lot of that stuff changed. So I do wonder if Jake would be switching that up in the future, but for now, this was just the indexed attachment of 6-inch Deep Strike.
Yeah. This was my favorite match in terms of what I was simultaneously looking forward to, but also not looking forward to. I was looking forward to this because Jake is awesome. Like, he's such a great guy. And I've seen him. We've interacted quite a few times at events. And if you've ever seen his paint job, like, it's on point. His dioramas, and I've always given him kudos. You know, one of my favorite moments in the grand tournament was actually Maryland Open when he won best prize. I was looking at him as they were about to announce it because I knew he deserved it, and he won it because he worked so hard to make a beautiful army, and he's just such a pleasure to play. But when I saw the matchup, I'm like, well, I told Nick, I was like, oh, this is the one I lose, because it really is a rough matchup against power armor. This list picks up power armor, and it's a nightmare to deal with. And
close result too.
Yeah, it was a close result, and this is the one I actually lost this. I lost this, and I actually reached out to Jake later. I said, "Listen, you had won this match, and the only reason I won in terms of the results is there was one moment where he should have just charged my Stern Guard and just took the core of my army, just ripped my heart out, and I think he charged my Eradicators. So the one time that the unit was like, I don't care. About
he didn't know the loser's about to exit the list.
I remember he was like, oh man, if he charges his Stern Guard, it's over. He wins this, and and then he goes into the Eradicators. I'm like, oh, the Eradicators did something. There were distraction card effects. And so I knew I was going to lose this. So my idea, and this is how I approach these matchups. If it's a bad matchup, I'm going to score. Let me bring up my page actually on this. I'm just going to score as fast as possible and try my best to keep him off primary.
Right.
He still did a good job of staying on primary, but I was like, I gotta just score as fast as I can because I will be tabled. And sure enough, he had just whittled my army down. I had a moment in round 1 or 2 where he gave me the tempo similar to Nick did, and I was able to get my Stern Guard in position to theoretically, in my mind, mathematically, clear out a good chunk of his army, 25% of his army, and get myself in a position to be in a really good shape. And despite the math, we all know this, you still got to roll dice.
Yeah.
And demons have a 4 binvol and everything. So the math was on my side. But the dice were not on my side, and things bounced, and I'm caught out in the open. And I'm like, oh, I'm in danger.
Yeah.
And he did a good job on a clapback, but I think it was maybe that moment where I was like, he just made these choices on the charges, and
Hmm.
I remember at the end of the round, it must have been in round two going into three. I'm like, man, he could have won, and
Yeah.
now I have to, it was one of those, the Art of War book, like if an opponent's making a mistake, don't interrupt them. I said, like,
Mhm.
oh man, I can't say anything, but he's just a wrong choice. I reached out to him and told him, like, here's
Right.
how you win. Great game.
Yeah.
But this was the tough one. This was
Yeah.
really, really tough.
That's great that you did that too, because then it helps them learn, improves the skill, and helps. Because I know those decisions. He was probably thinking hard about like, is this the right one? Maybe it is Eradicators. They do the most damage to me. I should try and get rid of the threat, but I always try and look too to get rid of their scoring potential first, because the scoring is what's going to win the games as opposed to the threat potential.
Yeah, and,
Um,
and I understand the fear. You got a big old demon, and you feel like the Eradicators have all these re-rolls, but
And they're going
you
to do
have a four.
D6 plus 27 damage each time. Yeah.
yeah.
Correct. But you have to also remember on the flip side against demons, how you defeat demons, and this will come up later against justice, is volume.
Right.
Like, okay, you got a forbidden vol. All right, well then just make 1,000 saves. And
Yeah.
he went for the spike damage unit over the volume. And if I'm a demons player, I'm always going after the volume units to try to
Right.
get them off the board.
100%. That's
Yeah,
totally
it is
true.
it's a tricky thing to be afraid of though, because you're like, yeah, I've got a 4-up and like I should pass most of my saves and I can CP reroll one, but you're like, oh, if I lose one, like, oh, it's bad. But you're
Yeah.
absolutely right that the Stern Guard are way more consistent.
100%. It's true. Last weekend at the RTT, I played Shadow Legion, and my Rogodoran, all my flat 3 guns damage did not do as much damage into a Bloodthirster as 18 stubber shots.
Also, didn't your Rogodorn just tank a Bloodthirster to the face and just laugh at it?
That's a story for another day. He did.
I was
Emperor,
surprised by that one, I'll be honest.
Emperor protected that day. 6 up, feel no pain was very generous
That's when you put a
against the
little
Bloodthirster.
little kill marker on the side.
Yeah. I got to put some battle damage on for that one. He had a great listen to you,
Barely
too.
any, apparently.
Great, yeah, great
Yeah.
list. It was well made. A lot of thought put into it. Now that I'm talking this out, I think what probably went through his mind is during my activation where my Stern Guard bounced when they shouldn't have, he
Yeah.
probably thought, oh, they're not as much of a threat as I thought. And then when I rolled
Mhm.
his Eradicators and made him just make, hey, here's 4 saves. He's
Right.
gonna, they will kill your demon.
Yeah.
I think that's what probably went in his mind, and that's why he went after that. So
Yeah. And then
Yep.
I'm just going to go through his list real fast. It's very short, but it is, like you said, a high threat to power armor. He's got triple Screamers, triple Fiends, Plague Bearers, Scarbrand, Shalaxi, Great Unclean One, and Bellicor.
yeah, those
Oof.
fiends, man, those fiends
Yeah.
are
So
disgusting
good.
against power
I mean,
armor.
Yeah.
not so much anymore, but
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
All right, that's
Man,
awesome.
yeah, definitely a close one, but you squeaked it out in the end, and
Yeah.
all came down to that charge.
It really did. Yeah, it really did. So
Awesome.
There's something about GTs. Let me tell you, I don't know what it is, but like you're trotting along and you're like, okay, I can maybe do well at this, and there's always this random like round 1 or round 2 where you're like, this is really really tight, and like part of that speaks to the high quality of players that we had at that event for sure. But I don't know what it is. Like you could go 4-0 and have round 1 be like your toughest matchup randomly for just some reason.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what's so weird.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget his name. I'm sorry, Corey. Corey. What's his last name? Charles. He was at our event. He usually runs demons. Corey White, maybe. Anyways, my Atlantic City run a couple years ago. X and 1. Where did my X come from? My 1 come from? Him. Round 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or-
Corey
Oh, yeah.
White. Corey
Corey
White.
White. Yeah, yeah.
I've got more stories than I care to tell about. Oh, I matched into this Art of War player round 2 at like ACO or BFS. Once it was even I ran into who was it? Nanavati. We were both 1-1 in round 3. I got him at BFS, and I was like, "Why are you in the 1-1 bracket?" Well, he lost to the guy who won the event, so hard to hate that too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's too funny how those sometimes happen.
Yeah. So moving on to round 3, looks like you got into Dan Maloro, Thousand Sons, Old
Dan,
Dust Boys.
Yep. He's a local guy. We actually bounce off each other quite a bit because he plays at Green Dice. We also exchange running our leagues together here in the region. We have very large leagues. We usually sell out of 3 league spots, sometimes 4.
Wow.
But he's one of my guys that helps me. We get a lot of
Awesome.
reps in. Dan is so it's a double-edged sword, and Dan. I love Dan. Dan loves me, so he knows I've given him really healthy criticism here, healthy constructive criticism here. But Dan is the master at like TTS. Like he gets a lot of reps in. He has so many reps in every matchup. He's great at that analytical. You can tell he's got an engineering degree background,
Right.
and you can tell he's very analytical in the way he approaches the game. I had a surprise for Dan. That was called an Evasaur Assassin,
Oof.
and I think he still has PTSD from that. And that Evasaur Assassins, I love this guy, and it's not I will not take credit for this. Tim is one of our other local players. He hit me with an Evasaur Assassin once. I'm like, oh, that could be really good in the right matchup. It's not. It's very very situational.
Right.
But T Suns were always my speed bump in terms of I couldn't wrap my head around how to beat T Suns. I just could not do it. I even told Sasha, like, there's something about this. And you know what? One of the best things to do when you can't wrap your head around something is get your ass beat by it. And TJ Lanigan beat me at Atlanta City Run. It helped me wrap my head around it a little bit more so. Like, you know, here's what they can do. They're extremely good in Overwatch. You do not want to be exposed. If they see you, they're just going to pick you up. Your feeling pains don't matter. Your anvils don't matter. So, but what really clicked, and unfortunately for Dan, is when the data slate came out, and when they changed their points. What they've done with T Suns is they've changed the breakpoint on Cabal points.
Right.
Then I'm like, oh, it's all about these Cabal points. And like, this is how your army should be ran around, is how many Cabal points you have. And he was able to use the full breadth of his Cabal points because we weren't using the new patch yet. So here's what I did. Similar to how I will ask people, how many units do you have? And you'll see on my board here, I'll put little circles for number of units. I just wrote Cabal points at the top. I have 16 at the top of my list. He had 19, but right out of the gate as we deployed, I think I got first turn. Evasaur Assassin scouted 9 inches off the board, and then went like 24 inches and absolutely knocked out Armon, like just like that. And you can just see that you can just see him making the saves, and just he can't even CP reroll out of it. He's just you can see this face like Zach Galifianakis with all the math, like all of a sudden the math is going out of his head, like oh yeah, he's dead. And I wrote, you have 16 Cabal points.
Hit him with the Dustbuster.
Yeah. So 120 points punched up dramatically.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of the puzzle figured out for me. And then I just started tracking Cabal points and saying, okay, you're down to 16 now. Then I've crossed out 14, 12. I got him down to 11, and I was just really strategic on how can I punch up to remove Cabal points. I'm going to outscore him and remove Cabal points as much as I can.
Right.
And so I kept his rubrics at bay. There was actually a point where I kept Oath persists, and I think people forget this. Oath persists, and so he moved up some rubrics, which I had whittled down with, I believe, Inceptors. Yeah, they were Inceptors. It was down to one rubric and the character, and then he moved it. I overwatched and cleared it, so now he's down to like 12 Cabal points, and so I just made sure that if I'm going to lean into his army and remove things, get rid of his Cabal points. That's going to just break his back. And
100%.
That was the theme. I think the Armon, that was just me being Bane right out of the gate. Like, I'm just going to lift you up, Batman, break your back, and let's see what happens. And
that was a hell of a character to get.
Yeah, it really was. And that's what won me the game, was just breaking his back right out of the gate.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what, T-Suns have great dash sheets. They can hit pretty hard, but it's really, like you said, it's the Cabal points turning on their spells and activations. That's really what sends the army over the edge to really knock some armies down. But once you're able to disable that early in the game, they got to commit to either try and making up for that damage, or they got to try and whittle out some scores. They got to be very careful, and that's why the skill ceiling for that army is just so freaking high.
Yeah, and one last quick thing too, and I think this is what got him on Armon being able to be got like this is he, to his fault, this is the double-edged sword of TTS. People play TTS over and over and over again, but you have to realize when you go in front of a board, it's going to be different from TTS. It's not going to be exact, and that's okay. And it was a tower, and you can go through the tower walls. And he thought that, I guess in his mind, the whole thing was blocking, and he had him right next to that tower. So the assassin could go in the tower and fight through the wall. That's not on TTS. So
I think the only person... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So I think the only person who has true TTS to real life vision would be Sean Naden. First time meeting him, I was like, "Oh, you are tall."
Yeah, so it's a balancing act. TTS is a powerful tool, but the kinesthetic process of actually going through and
Right.
seeing this actually came up in a later game. We'll talk a later round two that we'll talk about to someone who also TTSs a lot. And I've given them both this feedback is like it's powerful, but get out there and see what the
Right.
boards look like.
100%. You know, it's totally true too, because then most events, you know, terrain doesn't stay perfect on the board and it gets moved around a little and this or that. So some people might be used to lanes that might exist on the TTS board, but in real life, with stuff moving around, it's not going to be picture perfect. Like you said, still got to get that real world experience again on the tabletop and setting up and seeing what everything's all about, you know? Like you said too, the angles and positions you could see from the computer, not the same in real life.
And on top of that, honestly, with Thousand Suns, there's just something about them where the discrepancy between someone who has played 5, 10 games with Thousand Suns and someone who's played, 50 to 100 is a big deal. Like, I know I
Yep.
always give props to TJ because he's just such a good player on the face of it, but he also has, I'm not even joking, probably 500 reps with Thousand Suns,
Mhm.
and it really shows
Yeah.
because he knows exactly what to do and when to do it. And especially before Thousand Suns got like 3 rounds of nerfs, which I still say was largely because of him. Um, you know, it was so difficult to play into them and him specifically because he just knows exactly what to do, and they have so many tools that it's difficult to play around at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan's the same way. He's got the same skill level that every time I play him, like, and in fact, he beat me just like the next weekend we did our league event, and I was
Mhm.
running Righteous Crusader, and he beat me soundly because yeah, he knows how to play this army.
Right.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, moving into number 4, you have into Justin Serrano, previous
Yes.
Winter Ruin champion.
Yeah, Justin. I love playing Justin. I am his speed bump. Unfortunately, he has not
Yeah.
cleared me yet. I beat him last year at the Grand Tournament. I beat him
Mhm.
again. Um, this actually addresses one of the questions that I think we got in chat. Do I use the app or do I use a notepad? I use a notepad to do this, and there's a reason why. And when I look at my own page, I ask Justin, how many units do you have? Create a circle and a little note with each unit. I knew I outcounted him on units, so I was going to go into the game plan of
Mhm.
outscoring and seeing how I could trade up as much as possible by eliminating his trash. But here's here's the interesting. This was a testament to two things. For one, asking good questions.
Mhm.
Yes, I had literally seen his game being played before because I sat at the judges table, or I sat as a judge watching Alex Miller and Justin play for the final at World to Ruin. No, I wasn't taking notes to try to beat him later. That's the meme, but that's
Yeah.
that's how it just happened to play out. But even watching it and playing it is different. And I was asking, okay, how does this whole damage mitigation transfer thing work? Like, what is the range for this thing?
Right.
So I kept asking him, and I was making my movements based on that. And so my idea was rather simple. Let me pull apart his army. So
Right.
let me see what I could do to get the whole army. Because you see the deployment zone there. He doesn't necessarily want to be in the center because I got Stern Guard, and so I strategically moved some stuff way up to that northwest quadrant. I
Mhm.
brought some stuff to tease out to the other objective, so it couldn't be ignored by myself. Like a lot of people will like, okay, they'll go for the closest one to their left to his far side because they'll think, okay, I'll put something here that you can't get to easily. So I strategically unfolded my army out to pull him away from those demonettes, so he
Right.
couldn't necessarily take advantage of that. Um, and the second piece here is we could see in the center that the ruins have that L shape. If I'm on the battlefield edge to the south, the wall, if I'm down there, you're protected if you've got a unit in the pocket.
Right.
They were flipped on our table.
Ah.
And I before I even start playing, I look at the board state and say, what's different from what I'm
Mhm.
used to? And
Right.
it was flipped, so it was open, or I should say that it was closed towards the other direction. So
Right.
I recognized that early on. So I did not put any, and yes, it creates a element of exposure for shooting armies to take advantage of, but I'm also susceptible to that. So I made sure
Right.
that I did not go into that ruin.
Smart.
He sent some fiends in there. He had like 2 or 3 in there, so then I could see the whole unit.
Mhm.
He had a chariot that was kind of out in the open. I had this play to pull them all apart so they pull the army away from his demonettes so he couldn't take advantage of the damage transfer.
Right.
And to Justin's dismay, he saw what I was doing and he went into analysis paralysis. I love Justin to death, and he knows this. So and we talked about this, but he probably spent a good 20 minutes, 25 minutes, like trying to figure out his first turn. What the hell do I do now? Like
Right,
David's
right.
like, I know what David's doing here.
Yeah.
This is a really dangerous position. In fact, I had to go get clocked because I was like, oh god, this is going to take forever.
Yeah.
Because he just kind of went into analysis paralysis mode. He knew who I was. I knew his speed bump, and this is another
Right.
lesson to, if you're going against a great player, a TJ Lanigan type, a Sasha Cut, calm down. Calm down. They're players. They got to roll dice too.
Right.
Focus on your game plan that you came into. But it worked. I was able to remove Fiends really early on. I was able to remove Chariots really early on. I was putting on so much pressure and eliminating some of the trash that we use to score. He was forced to have to use Demons to score, which is not what he wants to do.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think he did. What is the name of that? Everybody hates it. What is the name of that stratagem? It's
Thieves of Pain.
Thieves of Pain. Thank you.
Yep.
He used it
Burned in
once.
my brain.
Used it once.
Right.
I think the entire game, and it actually didn't do anything either. I don't think it did anything. It didn't matter.
Right.
So game plan
Yeah.
just really worked out well in my favor, and yeah, it was a
Yeah.
pretty lopsided win.
That was smart on your part because that type of army is like you said, it's a tight knit ball. But as soon as you get that one thread to sort of unravel and spread it out thin, it's hard to recover. If they can stay as that tight unit moving up the field with and take advantage of their strats, it's near damn impossible to beat. But once you can spread them out like that and start picking it apart, like you said, that's the way to go into Legion of Exodus. Yep.
Yeah, and at this point we're at the last four, the top four. So the night prior, I knew that these were the four lists I was going to, and this speaks to kind of GT discipline here. Is if you are in this position where you've got four lists in front of you, you better be up late, like reviewing lists and figuring out,
Right.
talk to your teammates, like what is my game plan? And I
Right.
created a game plan for every single one of them, including Charles.
Yeah.
Just ignore his warrior brick. Yeah, that's a good game.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yep. I learned that lesson last week.
So I came up with a game plan, and this is and when we talk about this next game too, it is pretty much like I stuck to a game plan, and
Right.
results followed.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you got to do. If you want it that bad, you got to take that time after the event's over. I know you got to be tired and stressed and whatnot, but if you put the extra steps in to just really focus on next day of what's ahead, then it helps you out next day because you have a clear conscience. You know what you're doing. You know what your game plan is. You could take that deep breath. You don't have to stress anything. You can say, hey, I got a plan. I'm ready to go. We're going to take this event home.
Yep.
And also, David, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in addition to this layout, if I'm like, taking Justin's perspective, being a little bit less than ideal for him, you're just how many MSU units you have, your +1 to wound oath and stuff. Like, I feel like it's kind of difficult for him because if I'm sitting in his shoes, I'm like, if I full send, I'm pretty sure I get screened. And if I don't full send, I think I get, picked apart not that slowly because, +1 to wound oath. So, great execution there. But yeah, if I was Justin, I could totally understand where his analysis paralysis came from that last round.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it was just an open floor plan, which was in my advantage. Again, when we talk about how Jake's game plan went compared to mine, Justin knew to ignore the eradicators. He knew the stern guard were the ones that could drop a demon because of volume. So yeah, that's exactly it. If I go out in the open, I'm dead. If I get
Right.
on these positions, I'm dead. If I get away from my demonettes, I'm dead. So it was just a tough matchup for him. It really was.
For sure.
But kudos to him. He just walked away from grand tournament in Colorado and went to the finals.
That's right. Yeah, he was at the Denver Fight Club.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So he keeps trucking on, and he went X1. He went to the final tables, and I think he
Yeah.
lost against DACA. So that's like a nice little asterisk for him. So
Right.
Yeah.
you won in my heart, Justin.
Yeah. True champion to the people.
Seriously.
Yeah. And that'll bring us into round 5. This is going for first place. This is one of my favorite lists coming up because everyone has the same reaction when they see it. They just say, what the fuck? How many
Yeah.
Nurglings is that?
He didn't even take the most.
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
He chickened out. He took like 14 less than he could have or something.
just 14 less.
Yep. Yeah, this was a big one. And I had a game plan for this one. I had a game plan for going first, and I had a game plan for going second. This was the one matchup where everything's on the board. No
Yeah.
deep strike. You cannot do that against this list. Alex
Yeah.
Miller, just to give you guys some background, if you not played him and seen what he's been doing with this list, he's been tearing up the GT circuits. I think he had won 4 of the last 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
He went to the finals went to ruin against Justin. He's getting really consistent with results with this list, and when you see it, it's a nightmare, like a literal nightmare to deal with, because all of a sudden you got Nurglings. If he goes first, you're stuck in your deployment zone trying to go
Right.
chew through Nurglings.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough activations on the board right out of the gate, you lose, or at
100%.
least lose for 3 rounds.
Yeah. I think just in screening trash, it comes up to about 168 wounds you have to chew through. That's
Yeah.
that are all going to be -1 to hit most of the time.
yeah.
Yep, -1 to hit,
Have an
and then
actual
you can also
invuln just because why not?
if you get close enough, you can also subtract 1 from your ballistic skill, so all of a sudden you're like -2 to hit essentially.
Yeah.
It's disgusting to deal with, and despite it being lopsided on the score, guys, this was a tough matchup,
Right.
only because of having to chew through it. And so my game plan was this: everything needs to be on the board. If I go first or I go second, I don't care to be in jail. I do have enough activations to actually chew through all these wounds, and that was in my advantage, is just the volume of attacks that I had. And to Alex, we rolled a see who goes first. He rolled a 2. I rolled a 5. And I will say, when I saw that 5 go up, the sense of relief that was tremendous.
Right.
And this is where I also caught myself. I realized, okay, now this is mine to lose. So I don't want to overcommit and blender everything to a point where because he has powerful clapbacks behind those walls.
Right.
I don't want to overcommit and lose my army to the clapback, because if you saw the pile of toys that he killed, it was a lot at the end of the game. And if I pushed too hard, too heavy, what ends up happening then is I lose on the clapback. And so when we look at the battlefield, I think he got first drop. It says something about these Nurglings, is how powerful it is. He was able to like screen out from the northwest, not quite towards the objective, all the way down to the southeast.
Yeah.
So that's his first one. So I knew. Thank you, Chris. I think he's in chat here. Him and I talked about that. That's exactly what's going to happen. So we both talked about how I needed to create a pocket for myself.
Right.
So I created the pocket in the northwest with my scouts, just so I had a breakout point. And then I used my other set of scouts to just trying to create a soft screen kind of center to protect that pocket in the northwest. So I knew I had a pocket. I could forget about the rest. But what's interesting on the deployment is he kind of deployed rather light on the southeast, and he did so with a number of units that I knew I could outpunch. I can punch up through. So I thought, that's interesting. So if I can clear the screen, I could take the southeast, and then it would be mine for the rest of the game, because he's just so light.
Right.
He went heavy up in his north side of the deployment. So with Typhus sitting right on the line on the northwest there too, north side too. So it kind of gave me an opportunity to really kind of punch up if I go first. And he also had a Plague Burster right on the open, like right there, kind of in the south, kind of in the center there, towards the east side of the map. And so the one time the Eradicators did something, I was able to advance and shoot the Plague Burster right out of the gate. But I go first. I activate Devastator Doctrine, and I just absolutely just blendered a bunch of stuff. And even despite all the activations I had, I still did not kill all those Nurglings.
Yeah.
Those Nurglings persisted throughout the entire game, but I was able to break out of jail rather quickly.
Right.
And I was able to get on to some scoring, and I started running away with primary. And at that point, I realized all I need to do is keep him off primary and keep him out of the battle zone, because he took a fix as well. He took cleanse and engage.
Right.
So if I keep him off primary, he can't cleanse. And that's exactly what I did. He got 20 points on primary. 15 of them came in the 4 and 5. He scored 10 on secondaries. That was about it.
Right.
That's because it just kind of I kept the pressure on him.
Yeah. It seems you played the smartest way to go about it. Especially, it's just such an overwhelming amount of wounds to chew through. But like you said, well, as soon as you could break out into that one pocket and just start swinging around, Nurglings are there just to exist. They're not much of a attacker or defender. They just want to jam you up and keep you locked in.
Yeah.
Speaking of jamming up and locking in, I heard your scouts did their best Nurgling jail impression on Typhus for a mathematically impossible period of time. It is to hear Alex tell it.
Oh my God, the scouts, those guys were invincible. They lasted, I think, the entire game except for
Wow.
turn 5. So yes, I moved him up and I jailed Typhus and his I forget who he had I don't know
With
if it was
5 scouts, just to be clear.
just 5 scouts.
Okay.
And I yeeted my Eversor Assassin. That's where I made my mistake. I didn't know really where to yeet the Eversor Assassin on this game, but I yeeted it up and it took out some Poxwalkers. But I probably should have just blendered the unit that was bodyguarding Typhus.
Hmm.
But anyways, his scouts jailed him. And then I actually brought the jail back towards that objective on the northwest there, and they stayed there, and they kept the objective off away from him the entire time
Right.
because he didn't have the shooting to really clear them because they're surviving shooting with cover. But also, if he charges them, he locks up Typhus with some scouts. I don't think he
Yeah.
wants that. So those scouts were warriors.
Oh
They
yeah, for sure.
absolutely a set of 5 scouts controlled that northwest objective the entire game for me.
Wow. Yeah, Emperor protected that day.
Yeah, they sure did.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was a heck of a run. You did not have any easy matchups that day, that weekend.
No, it was rough. I think Jake was probably the one I thought I was going to lose.
Hmm.
You know, to my team's credit and my, a little bit of how I think the last two, they actually went rather well for me. I felt
Right.
really comfortable. I talked to Sasha about this too. I
Mhm.
focus on my physical health too going into these tournaments so I can, I'm fresh mind.
Right.
Because there's a couple things. Justin's analysis paralysis, I think, was from exhaustion. Also, the one thing I forgot to mention on Alex's game is he charged in with his brick of what is their power armor that's disgustingly powerful. There's like 10 models there. This is where the
Oh,
dare comes out of me. I don't know these models.
this was in Justin's list, or this?
Alex's list. They came out of a Rhino. They were just
Oh, that's
disgusting.
our Plague Marines.
So the Plague Marines come out,
Plague Marines.
and through his own exhaustion, he charges on the. And this is where I thought he was going to possibly be really at a problematic moment.
Mhm.
He does his charge, still in the clap back to position himself, and he charges with so many units across the board.
Right.
He kind of takes this clockwise approach to his activations. All right, let's just start on this side of the board. And I was like,
Oh no. I
good.
know where this is going.
Yeah.
And then I do interrupt because I had one
Mm.
CP, but I had a captain. So
Right.
interrupt, finest hour, and I think I picked up 7 models through finest hour alone.
Yeah.
And then so he couldn't quite kill this first stern guard brick. So
Mm.
here I am with a captain with 1 stern guard left,
Yeah.
and it was that was a backbreaker for him. He just
Right.
kind of sat there. I was like, oh, yep, you just picked up 7 models with a really good interrupt, and I think that's what broke the game for him.
For sure. For sure.
But there comes the exhaustion.
Yeah.
Go in with it those final 2 days or one final day. Clear-headed. Drink a lot
Hmm.
of water because you
Yeah.
want to be as fresh as possible.
100%.
And just as importantly, make sure you have a game plan when you go into each of these matches,
Yeah.
especially if you're riding high into the finals.
Definitely.
I mean, you could always just pull the Ganyo and run a 10K the morning before round 1.
Yeah.
Guess what? Sasha and I were in the gym with a couple other people that we recognize at LVO. It's really important. Get up early,
Yeah.
get some runs in, do the same thing.
Definitely.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Gets the blood
I didn't even know
flowing.
there was a gym at ACO, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
LVO. Yeah. Yep.
No, that is true too. Once you're up early, get the blood flowing, firing all the neurons, you're fresh, ready to take on the day.
Yep.
No, that's great. So yeah, that seems like a great recap of the event, Dave. We really appreciate you having you come on and tell us about your trials of running through this weekend and getting through the games. You had shared some really great knowledge. I hope a lot of the listeners were able to pick up too. It was all super sound advice. We got we have the Green Dice Super Major weekend, first weekend of June, I believe, right? That will be the
Yes, sir.
6th.
Yep. June
Um,
6th.
June 6th. Yep, we got that weekend going on. We got BFS first weekend of May. Anything else you'd like to plug?
No, I think that was about it. Yeah, just please come out. Talk to anybody who's been to the grand tournament that I ran at Green Dice. I think they'll give you the same feedback. This is very unique.
Mhm.
So I encourage you to check out it through an RTT just to scout out the area, and then show up to the grand tournament in June. And then Winter Ruin 3 next year in January. There's
Awesome.
this gaping hole where LVO used to stand. Oh, guess
Yeah.
what? Let's see what we can do to fill that.
Yeah.
All
Time
those
to take it over.
international players looking for a place to play in
Yeah,
January.
Yeah, that'll be
100%.
awesome.
That'll definitely be a great
Thank you
time.
all. I really appreciate it. And Charles, I know we didn't talk much. Charles was. Let's talk about that real quick. As I was game planning for him, and Charles has played me, and he's beat me with an ACDC list. He's a fantastic player, and there's a matchup I was a little bit worried about, but I had also played something very similar to that, and how to beat a warrior brick. ignore the warrior brick and kill all the
Yeah.
trash. That was my gameplay, Charles. And I think we had a quick, hey, Charles, this was my game plan. How would I have done? He's like, oh, yeah, that's how you do it.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I think unless
think
you have
I'll-
anything else for the good of the order, I think that about is a wrap on this episode 2.
Yeah, episode 2. Dave, thanks again. You're our first big guest on the show. We appreciate it. This will be a big milestone for us. And yeah, everyone, that's Dave Anderson from Dumpster Fire. Great local team in the area. Great player, great guys. So, Dave, enjoy the rest of your day, brother. Thank you.
You as well. Thank you all. Take care.
Here, guys.